Hello, everybody, and good evening on this Tuesday evening, 1st of March. Glad to be here tonight just to do a bit of a catch up and try to connect with everybody who's been who's put me here in many senses of that word, as far as elected me or supported me in any way. So, as you know, ever since I got elected, I kind of committed to doing different styles of interaction with people. I wanted to be more present. I appreciated certainly how former Mayor Darling had taken the initiative to be with people, on a platform, in a space that they occupy, talking about issues that matter to himself as well as to council. And certainly not the mayor, but I'm, councillor nonetheless, and have been in this role now for just over 8 months. And it's certainly been a lot. And so I wanted to provide that opportunity for people to provide feedback, ask questions, make comments, and just for myself to generally catch up and let people know what I've been up to. And I think in this day and age where we see a lot of distrust of government, I'm certainly not in a major position of government within government, with provincial or federal politics, but here at the municipal level, nonetheless, talking about the issues that matter to us, talking about the issues that matter to me, and working on things in the background to try to make those changes happen. And so when you see a lot of distrust for government, it is unavoidable that you feel you have to weigh in, you feel you have to play a part in helping people see that the divide between average person and government is not as big as you may think. And especially in an age where conspiracy theory, where again, just that level of discontent and the sense of disenfranchisement by various groups within our country is on the rise, I think this stuff is more important than ever. And so that's what I want to do tonight. I've got my comment bar open. I've got we're streaming on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Facebook to try to provide a platform for people. And what I'm really trying to do is start a conversation. I'm just pulling up my platform here to make sure everything's streaming appropriately. But that's exactly what I said tonight, was to try to provide a platform for you to ask those questions. But what I want to start with is just a high-level overview of where we're at, what I've been working on, and thank you, Daryl. Good to see you too. And where we're going. And so one of the major things that I've been working on in my role as a councillor has been the strategic plan. So there's a lot of plans at the city level, as you can imagine. It's a $164 million corporation. It has hundreds of employees. It services about 70,600 and some odd residents. We're the oldest incorporated city in the country. So we have a lot of issues just with the fact that we're an older city. We also have a lot of advantages, and those don't get talked about an awful lot. But the strategic plan kind of puts itself in a position to guide the next 10 years. And so one interesting thing is, right now, the provincial government has committed to this local governance reform, municipal reform. You may have seen it talked about. You may have seen it mentioned in the newspaper or on social media. What does it mean? It means a lot for our province. There's no question about it. Obviously, I've written an op-ed about it in the Telegraph Journal. I've been outspoken about it on social media. But the reality is that this local governance reform, led by Minister Alain's office and the Progressive Conservative Government of New Brunswick, has committed to reducing the number of entities from in the 300s to 90. And that means that a lot of what we called local service districts, LSDs, are going to be amalgamated into bigger municipal centers or rural communities where they're going to have elected councillors like myself, a mayor, to help guide the budgeting process and the direction of those communities. Certainly, that's a long overdue. Back in the 60s, when the provincial government of the day reform government, they really changed the game to tip the scales in favor of rural New Brunswick. And at the time, St. John would have been the only major city in the province, and it was perceived that there needed to be an empowerment of the rural community and some autonomy provided for it. And that's going to change because now we have three major cities. Most of New Brunswickers live in a city. Certainly a bigger majority of Canadians live in cities, and globally we're on a trend where more and more people live in cities. It just makes sense. It's not that rural communities don't have an incredibly important part to play. But what does this all mean? I started with the strategic plan, and now I'm on a bit of a rant about municipal governance reform. I say that because that's the landscape we find ourselves, right? That's the pond we're swimming in now, right? As a city, as your elected councillor, I'm now swimming in this pond where the framework for local government, for municipalities, is changing rapidly. And so what I've come to know, what I've learned over the years as far as how local governance works and what abilities we have, what changes are possible, that's changing pretty rapidly too. And what I'm hopeful for, one of the things that I've been most specifically involved with as a chairperson of the Strategic Planning Committee, which is this advisory committee that was struck by council to develop this 10-year strategic plan. So the 10-year strategic plan has not been adopted by council yet. It hasn't been finalized. It's currently going out to the public and staff for consultation. So if you just bear with me, I should have had this up here a few minutes ago, but I'm just going to put in the chat bar the link to a platform that we're now using as a city to get some of that public feedback and engagement on the topics that we're exploring and developing and trying to change. And that platform is called Shape Your City. And it's this online platform that posts, various projects we have ongoing. And in the coming weeks, you're going to see a Shape Your City profile page that covers the strategiig plan. So right now you'll see up there the St. John Affordable Housing Action Plan, the Dominion Park Revitalization, just sharing big ideas, share your favorite places in St. John, comment on the alternate side parking in the north and east west sides. So there is already some engagement happening there, and I'm just going to plug that in here and you'll see that pop up. This is a link to the Shape Your City account. So here's where you can weigh in. And this is a platform that we're going to use for our strategic plan to get your feedback. We're going to do other consultation as well. We're going to do focus groups. We're going to get businesses together and stakeholders. But the brass tacks of the plan is that we want to guide our priorities over the next 10 years. Currently, we have lots of plan. We have Plan SJ, right? Plan SJ sets out the land use policies. So where are we hoping to build what? If you hear a screaming child in the background, that would be my son Jubal, who is just pretending to be a dinosaur. Maybe a Loch Ness sea monster. I'm not sure. Sorry. Anyway, I'm in the basement trying to chime in here. But yeah, that Shape Your City, the 10-year strategic plan is not planning to change Shape Your City, Plan SJ. Plan SJ is this land use policy, zoning policy. We have Zone SJ that helps build out Plan SJ. And it's just about what do we want to see and where, what kind of development, commercial, residential, industrial, where do we put it? What do the neighborhoods look like? Where are the neighborhoods going? And so that's Plan SJ. It's called our municipal plan, and it allows, and it was built by St. Johners and staff to make, our long-term forecast for the city something we built together, specific to us, not something that's imposed from Fredericton or Ottawa. That's one of the advantages of having a city, is we can build out these bigger, more ambitious plans because we have the horsepower, we have the staff to do it, and we have the specializations and expertise to do it. So the 10-year strategic plan is not replacing Plan SJ. The 10-year strategic plan is taking, I like to compare it to the 10-year financial plan. So many would remember under Mayor Darling, we, as a city, we came together and our councillors came together to adopt a 10-year financial plan that would right-size our city corporation, would right-size our services, and, in some cases they had to be cut back. Certainly it was a hard thing to do. The province stepped in and said, we are not going to provide you with this $10 million grant that we currently provide you with. So you're going to have to figure out how to make up that $10 million. So that would have been back in 2017. And in 2018 is when we got started on that. And certainly by 2019 into 2020 is when the hard work started to make up that $10 million. And what's interesting and what's certainly commendable from city residents' perspective, in my opinion, is that the services of the city of St. John did not suffer. And I say that they didn't suffer in that the service levels that we had already committed to were able to stay afloat and able to continue operations. It doesn't mean that the service levels we have are AA plus, right? So don't hear me saying that everything's good, there's no problems, we don't have any improvements to make, we don't have any, changes to do. Like, we do. But what's amazing is that our staff and our team came together to cut $10 million for that financial plan to make that happen. And, we still had recreation. We still had sidewalk plows. Where some cities don't have sidewalk plows. Cities bigger than us don't have sidewalk plows. We still had all sorts of, certainly don't plow as many sidewalks as we do, sorry. We still had a city transit. And again, I'm not saying those services are perfect. I'm just saying that they still stayed. And now we've gone beyond that. We've got that 10-year financial plan in place, a wage escalation policy in place for staff. We're saving our money. We're spending it wisely. We're committed to smart growth. And so that work is done. So that's the 10-year, that's the financial plan we have. And we're still building on that. But that was our commitment. The city made that commitment to the province. So the provincial government and the city of St. John, they came together and they wrote a plan called the Sustaining St. John, a 3-part plan. And in the plan, there were all sorts of recommendations. So they came together, they hired consultants, they did their own research. They figured out where St. John wasn't keeping up with the times, where we were overspending, where we were, not being frugal enough or whatever. And so that Sustaining St. John, a 3-part plan, is really what kicked off that municipal reform conversation. And that's what's changed in a major way, that's what's changed the game for the whole province, is because they had to take a hard look at municipalities in the province, especially since we were the one raising some of this. And they realized pretty quickly as a province that the current status quo of how municipalities are constructed in this province is bass backwards is what I was going to say. But it's just not, it is not a best practice at all. You look down in Nova Scotia, there's 52 entities, right? We're going to have 90. So we're still quite a few more entities as far as municipal entities in Nova Scotia. But that 10-year financial plan was our commitment. We're still waiting on the province to deliver on some of their commitments. But that 10-year financial plan has been a game changer for the city. And I believe that the 10-year strategic plan is also a game changer for the city. And the reason is because it orders our priorities, right? We all have different desires and hopes and dreams and aspirations for the city of St. John. And what this 10-year strategic plan is going to do is order those. and bring them into an alignment with what do we have, what are we expecting to have, what are we weak on, what are we strong on, and how do we frame a plan that capitalizes and improves upon all of those without being so ambitious that it can't accomplish any of those, right? Many people know this. If you just plan to do everything, you end up doing nothing. So this strat plan, which has citizens on the board, it has councillors on the board, myself as chair, has gone through that with staff, looking at the best practices, looking at the direction of municipalities in this country, and said, where are we hoping to make major improvements, and how can we set a target that we can measure and plan to do that moves the needle on that topic. I'll give you one example. Just 1 second. Jubal, I need you to stop doing that, my friend. And I need you to go away. Daddy's on a video, and that's really disruptive.
Daddy?
Yes?
After you do that, put on your Iron costume because we're doing a costume party.
You're doing costume party. That's pretty rad, man. Okay, I'll be up when I can be, but I need you to leave Daddy in peace for now.
Okay.
Thank you. Costume parties are happening in the background, so it's always a big deal. So yeah, back to that 10-year strat plan. I'll give you an example. So we all know that transit is currently undergoing a major reformative restructuring, right? So they're building it basically from the ground up again. They're looking at everything. What size buses do we need? What's the routes that we need? How fast should those routes be? Where are we currently building that need added services that didn't need services 5 years ago? How we pay to be on the bus? Everything's being looked at. And so it's a major rebuilding of transit. And Director Ian Fogan is kind of the charge of that. We have a chair of our transit commission, Nick Cameron, who many would know is an outspoken transit activist and advocate, has been working this and understands that issue on a large way. And we have many great people. I'm on transit commission. Councillor Stewart, Councillor Lowe is on transit commission. A number of citizens that are highly engaged and highly professional citizens are on that. And so we're looking at everything. And one of the goals in the strategic plan is to raise the number of people in our city that use sustainable transportation. Now, sustainable transportation means more than just transit users. Sustainable transportation also means people who walk, people who ride a bicycle, even potentially people who car share, although it's a Stats Canada designation, what sustainable transportation is. And so we have that number based on the current census. We know how many St. Johners are using sustainable transportation modes. And what we can do is say, look, we know we're at 10.5%. How do we get to 20? And that's our goal. So the strategic plan has an objective in there, a goal to increase the number of the number of people in St. John using sustainable transportation as a primary mode of transportation to 20%. So it's a specific goal. So we have a number to be accountable to you on. We're committing to 20%. We're going to build plans to get that. We're going to develop transit to deliver on that. And we're going to resource it in a way to achieve that. And so with that in mind, that's kind of what the strategic plan is looking at. Now, the strategic plan is not just transit. It's not just sustainable transportation. It's recreation. It's arts and culture. It's land use. It's development. It's growth. It's population. It's the whole gambit. And within that, the goals and the outcomes and the objectives will all be something that we lead with. So once council adopts this 10-year strategic plan, then for the next 10 years, that's what we're committing to. And so you, the voter, people who are running for council in the future, all those talking points are going to come from there. How are we going to deliver what we've adopted? And the only way to overturn that strategic plan is with a high majority of council's approval. So it's a pretty amazing undertaking. It's kind of backwards because most of the time your strategic plans inform your master plans, right? So we have Play SJ, we have Plan SJ, we have Move SJ. We have these different plans, and the strategic plan usually exists, and those master plans come in to perform and deliver on that strategic plan. Well, here in St. John, we didn't have a strategic plan. We have never had one. And because of that, a lot of things have just been come and go, right? Maybe one council prioritizes it and makes it an important thing, and the next one doesn't. And so that inertia is lost, that momentum is lost, that commitment is lost. And so that's what I'm excited for. That's one piece of the puzzle that I'm excited for and that I've been working on pretty actively. And I think we have a great opportunity to deliver on. Just so I'm just going to, again, chime back in here. Welcome, everybody. See a number of viewers across the different platforms on YouTube. Sorry, I'm just moving the camera here. On Twitter and on Facebook. So thank you for joining me. Just making this a little bit about catching up with you. The people who put me here, the voters, the residents are my neighbors, and as well as just trying to help you see what it is we're working on. So I was just been catching everybody up on the strategic plan, on the new era we find ourselves in New Brunswick within municipal reform, how that's changing the game. And so please, by all means, comment, ask any questions you have, and I'll do my best to answer them. I had a couple of questions come in ahead of time that I want to get to as well. And I just want to say hello to everybody here. I see Daryl Bastress Sr. has been commenting a few places. Smaller buses, more increments. It's certainly something we're looking at with the Transit Commission as far as what the size of buses we're going to use are and how those buses, with whatever size they are, can best perform and deliver on our goals for transit. So certainly something that's being considered. And I see Brian Wilson's coming in. Hey, Brian, good to see you, my friend, as well as a few others. And so I'm just going to pull up a question that I got here. Just give me a second, make sure I get it right. I got this ahead of time. So it's a question about a recent development out in Loch Lomond. And the question is, how is it that our... Sorry, just let me synthesize this a little bit. It's a little bit all over the place. How is it that this development on Loch Lomond of an 88-unit apartment building was approved when it is not allowed under the current Plan SJ policies? So it's a great question, and it's certainly been contentious. Not sure if you can hear that, but it sounds like rhinoceroses running in my upstairs. It's children. It's 40-pound children. It's that time of night. Anyway, so give you a little update. Out on Loch Lomond Road, if you're familiar with the Little Res, you'll know that there's a major subdivision out there. And along the way, you'll come across to the left, just kind of an empty field. It's, just been vacant land for a long time, waiting for infill. That subdivision was developed, over the past 30 years by local developers. And it's come upon a current developer who's eyeballed it and said, we would love to put an apartment complex in there. That developer took the development idea to PAC, the Planning Advisory Committee. And Jubal, I need you to go upstairs.
Okay, I'll go.
Thank you. And PAC turned it down the first time. right? It was planned to be a much bigger development, and it was developed in a way that PAC wouldn't approve, and so they sent it back. It came to council. Staff recommended that we allow them to resubmit, and the idea was, okay, that's fine. Go back, do a drawing, take these things into consideration that PAC commented on, and come back to us. And so they came back and they had reduced the number of units in that development and added 9 affordable units into it, or their commitment to build affordable units. Please go upstairs, Jubal. And they got through PAC, not unanimous. There were 2 people that voted against it for various reasons. And then it came to council, and 6 councillors voted in favor of this development, and 4 voted against it. There were hundreds of residents that signed a petition against this thing. There were a dozen presentations made in favor and against. Most of them were against the project. And so it's hard as a citizen to look at this, I can imagine, and see all those people speaking against this, and they live there. How can you allow this to happen? And there's one principle that I think is important for us to remember, and certainly me, as I've been learning this role as in a governance role, is that, the city is made up of 70,000 plus people. Those people own the communities. Communities are not owned by any group. They're not owned by the minority of people who live in them. They're owned by everybody. We hold them in common, right? The land that the city of St. John has governance over, we hold in common. And so when we think about it in that way, and then when you add on this layer of there is major demand for units in this city, affordable and market. People want to move here. Okay, so we know there's demand. For the first time in maybe a decade, there's pretty substantial demand to live in this city. We add on that next layer of not only is there demand, there's rising housing costs, which means the demand for affordable housing has skyrocketed even more so. Okay, so we add that layer on, or in my mind, we add that to the layer of the city of St. John was built to be a city of about 80,000, 90,000 people in its appropriate core area, or main city area, not the surrounding area, of course. And so the city infrastructure, the road systems, the sewage systems, the water systems, you name it, they're all built to service a larger swath of land. Jubal, I really need you to go upstairs right now. Please listen to Daddy. No, I just need you to go upstairs, my friend, okay? Thank you. And so within Plan SJ, when we designed that, it was with that in mind. It was that every neighborhood can change over time. Why? Because we might need it to, right? If we need the housing situation to move from single detached family housing, which is what we've mostly been building over the past 15, 20 years, to fourplex middle housing or high density, hundreds of units, then we need the flexibility of a plan that can support that kind of growth in the appropriate areas, right? I live out here in Martinon. I used to live uptown. I live out here in Martinon. It doesn't make sense to put a 100-unit apartment building out here. Transit's pretty sparse. You can't walk anywhere. There's not a lot of recreational opportunities. There's no school nearby. It just doesn't make sense, right? And certainly it's a hard bargain to strike, and no city planner would ever advise that kind of sprawl, right? So within that, we look at, where is our primary development area? Where are those areas where we have vacant land that is serviced, that can support that and does need that kind of development? And so people can look at our plan and say, well, it seems like Loch Lomond was zoned for single family detached housing. And they're right, it largely was, because it is a little bit further out of the core. But on the east side, anybody who goes there knows there isn't a ton of land left around that primary development area that's just sitting waiting to be developed. And Loch Lomond is a major throughway, right? And it's a major service area, and it's a road that's built for a pretty substantial car usage, and it's currently underused. Even traffic studies we have back to 2019 state that it really isn't meeting its minimums, and it's certainly nowhere near its maximums for usage. And I mean, if you go to any other city that has a single lane in each direction in a highly populated area, you know that it's not common in cities in this country, or any country in the world for that matter, to have, you know, major twinned boulevard style road systems going everywhere. And so for us, looking at it, it fit the plan. All we needed to do was change the zoning of that parcel of land so that it allowed for some higher density. And so we did. And it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't mean that our zoning is wrong. It doesn't mean that our plan isn't being followed. What it means is we're allowing ourselves to change the specific designation when we need to. And so the developer is committed to affordable units. The developer is committed to building higher density. And it's a perfect timing, because right now we're looking at alternative transit policies and configurations that would enable something like transit on demand. And transit on demand is a pretty interesting concept that doesn't exist in many places in this country. But what it allows is for you to pick up your phone, call the service dispatch, or ahead of time if there's an app, say, hey, pole number 114, I need a pickup at pole 114 going to the St. John Regional Hospital. And what Transit on Demand does, where it's available, it kicks in and it says, okay, within a certain amount of time, you're going to get a bus there. And that bus is going to take you to one of our rapid routes where you can get on a direct route to your location. It's not a taxi. The bus does not come and pick you up and take you to exactly your location, but it takes you within a predictable timeline to a rapid area where there's again like a 15-minute route, and where there's a bus coming every 15 minutes to get you on that mode of transportation. So it's a pretty interesting concept. It allows us to change the game a little bit on where we service and how we service it with things like transit, because a lot of times people who live in apartments, they don't own two cars or even one car, right? They tend to have a more constrained income, and in many cases we need apartments with multiple bedrooms for families, and certainly these developers are building that. So it really fit with the needs of our city, and I think that's why most councillors voted in favor of it. It wasn't a matter of it being out of step with our plan. Our plan was built to be maneuverable and to change over time as we needed it to. So, okay, I see some things popping up here I wanted to get to. Question just on this. Just want to read through some of the comments. Approve quickly, sure, but approve quickly the good projects. Others go through the rigor. Brian, if you want to spell that out for me a little bit, I think I know what you mean. Like, some projects seem to go through a lot of rigorous introspection by staff and by people. This was certainly one of them, going to PAC twice, having dozens of people weigh in on it and whatnot. And others just seem to just go through. And some of the perception is that sometimes we miss opportunities to impose certain limitations or expectations on those developments so that they do well for the community. And I don't think that's wrong. And, sometimes when there's a slam dunk, a home run, where it's like, oh, thank God somebody's going to develop that plot of land or tear down that building, we're quick to rush to get those approved. And most of the community is too. So you don't see a lot of pushback. You don't see a lot of asks from the community on how we're going to reframe that. But if people are willing to come and develop it, we try to get that done as soon as possible. That's something that I'm certainly aware of, and I think other councillors are becoming aware of, that we need to have a closer eye on just development overall. And we don't have to be a city anymore that just begs for whatever development it can get. Like, we can expect more of our developers. We can expect more of the people who want to buy our affordable land here and build on it. It's a completely different game that we're in now than we were 5 years ago. And so we need to kind of change our lens on that. There's no question. Could we increase from 10% affordable units to 20% affordable units? Is this possible? So currently the province of New Brunswick has not imposed limitations on that. The city of St. John technically does not have the capability to impose any expectations on affordable housing units per se, except for in areas where we have made a municipal plan. So one of those examples would be the Central Peninsula Action Plan, where now we have adopted a plan by council that lays out a certain level of criteria for expectations for future development. So that does allow us to impose some of those minimums outside of any minimums that the province imposes just as a baseline rule. So it is possible for us to go 10 to 20. It would probably have to be the province that would have to take that step, or we'd have to finish another another neighborhood action plan like the Central Peninsula Plan, or amend those plans. And that's not easily done. There's a lot of work that's tied up in the Central Peninsula Plan. The Central Peninsula Plan seems to certainly be working for us. Our downtown experienced the fastest growth rate of any downtown in this province, and one of the highest in the Atlantic region as far as our uptown goes, our core, our Central Peninsula. So that plan is paying dividends, and the next plan for us to develop is the Old North End and the North End itself. So I expect in that we'll see a pretty hard conversation on affordable housing, and we'll have the Affordable Housing Action Plan to bolster that conversation, which is currently being developed by stakeholders as we go here. Okay, so where are we at here next? Population and business density need to be encouraged in the right areas. Absolutely. And a lot of places in the city don't have neighborhood plans, and that was one of my big things. It's one of the things I've talked about the most since coming here, is how do we get a neighborhood plan for our main neighborhoods? Because the city of St. John is unlike any city, in this province. When you go to Fredericton, when you go to Moncton, you don't see delineated neighborhoods. You don't see clear dividing lines between areas of the city, and you don't see sort of specialized regions of the city that are devoted to things. I mean, you see commercial district, industrial district, and you'll see residential scattered throughout. But we have mixed neighborhoods. We have commercial mixed in with residential in all of our neighborhoods. The Lower West Side, I think, is one that is in sore need of that mixture increase, because there's a lot of people that live down there, and there's just not a lot of commercial development. But again, we don't have a neighborhood plan for that. These neighborhood plans are a big undertaking. They require a high level of due diligence to meet the provincial standards in order for us to impose these types of municipal neighborhood plans over top of New Brunswick provincial government legislation. We need to have that due diligence met. We need to have a high level of citizen engagement, and there need to be a fair number of needs assessment on a number of categories. So within that, these neighborhood plans can take a year up to 2 years to develop. And so we're moving into the north end next. I would hope we'd move into the lower west after that. And then we would get to that east side, that near east side across the causeway, into the mall district and things like that, to kind of build out the types of neighborhoods we're trying to build. And we have the right incentives in place, and we're zoning appropriately in all those places. So that kind of density building and appropriate business development, like you say, Eric, comes with that type of planning. And the strategic plan that I talked about earlier, it's certainly one that can help inform some of that, but it's not detailed enough, right? The details are in those specific neighborhood plans, and it's exciting to on that strategic plan, one of the things that we lay out as as a goal or objective, I get the two mixed up sometimes, but in that we say we want to develop a new neighborhood plan every 2 years, right? So the next one is the north end, and then in 2 years we'll move in maybe to the lower west. I can't tell you. That will have to be decided by our staff to kind of designate that. And then it will, move into the other area of the city. But those neighborhood plans are crucial. And our strategic plan says in the next 10 years, we're going to develop 3 more neighborhood plans, maybe 4. I think it's 3, but it could be 4 once we finalize it. I'm not sure, because it's still being built out. So that's pretty amazing. And that's going to change the game in 10 years for the next 30 years, because those neighborhood plans, they last a long time. They inform a lot of things, and they set the tone for a fair bit of time. So that'll be important. Is Loch Lomond within the primary development area? Yes, it is. St. John has a long-standing history of blocking development and growth, and it's only recently just started to go in the other direction. That trend needs to continue and not be stifled for the betterment of the city and communities. I would somewhat agree, Ryan. I know you're, certainly where you're hard on the fight there for bringing outside developers to the city to invest in the city. It's a great endeavor, and we certainly appreciate it. I'm not sure that St. John has a long history of blocking development. I think what it has is a long history of lacking some of the specific plans that are needed to drive certain development. And it also has the presence of heavy industry, which has scared away most development. I've said this before, the city of St. John is the only city that I know of in this country where there's an inverse property tax assessment, where the closer you get to the core, the cheaper your units get on aggregate. I talked to a couple people in Australia the other night who were trying to start a tool library, and I mentioned that to them, and they looked at me like I had 10 heads. They said, yeah, I don't think there's a single city. Even our industrial cities in Australia have that reality. And I said, yeah, I know. It's a pretty phenomenal feature, and that hollows out our tax base. And it means that, poorer citizens are carrying the heaviest weight of service provision. Right. And it's an incredibly frustrating endeavor. And we have not had a provincial government that's been willing to impose its will on that inequity. And the city doesn't have the ability to do it. And I think that's scared away a lot of development, because we haven't been able to put in the right incentives to develop and to attract those developers to say, look, we know it's a tall order to build next to an oil refinery or a pulp paper mill, but if you're willing to come here and do that kind of work, we can meet you with these kind of supports that you won't find in Moncton, and you won't find in Fredericton, and you won't find in Halifax or Charlottetown. Because let's face it, people, we are the industrial city in Atlantic Canada. St. John's has some industry too. But, comparatively, we are the industrial city. We are the manufacturing city. And Moncton and Fredericton would not be here if it wasn't for this city bearing the burden of that and doing the work to build that for this province. And we've needed major municipal reforms from the province to empower us in that for 30 years and we haven't gotten it. And we're hoping that we're going to get it, but we still don't have it. Like I said at the top of the hour here, municipal reform is now on the table. There's major revisions happening, and we're hopeful that we're going to get it, but we don't yet. So let's keep going here. Hubs of transit work great in other cities. Agreed. That's what we're going to be building with that rapid route system, as well as that direct route system layered on top of transit on demand. Projects, Brian, project the city looking for developers with a good building history should be expedited. Others go through the typical process. Yes. So, if you have those A-level developers, I agree. We should be enabling them, promoting them, and helping them build out a good workload, right? And that's certainly something that I think is fair to do, and I think they do in other cities. Something that's being talked about. I know in our next growth committee, so another committee I sit on as a councillor is called Growth Committee. Now, Growth Committee is still coming into its own. It's not very old. Excuse me. The Financial Committee certainly had a really tall order. The Finance Committee, and the chair of the Finance Committee is Gary Sullivan. And before that was David Merrithew. David Merrithew was certainly the chair when it had to do its hardest work. But the Finance Committee had a pretty clear and robust set of deliverables that it was trying to deliver on, because the Finance Committee didn't exist as a standing committee of council before Mayor Darling and that council. And so, but along with finance came growth committee. And now that we have growth, it's going to be crucial for us to develop our modus operandi. So what kind of city are we looking for? What kind of neighborhoods are we looking for? And how are we going to plan to build those? And how are we going to incentivize that? How are we going to police that kind of development? And that's all questions we're having at Growth Committee. So at the next Growth Committee, one of the things we're going to be talking about is what we can do in 2023 to kind of deepen the capacity of our one-stop shop and our growth and community services, so that we're doubling down on those commitments in our communities, so that we have bylaw enforcement. We don't have homes that are getting run down and shuttered and with garbage left in the yard. We have landlords that are held accountable, but then we also are, we're also promoting, a certain standard and expectation within our communities for services that attract new landlords and attract new people. So Growth Committee is being developed. Chair of Growth Committee is Councillor Killen, and she's doing a tremendous job. She's got an incredible breadth of knowledge on the topic. She's worked in economic development. She's an entrepreneur. She's worked in social entrepreneurial background as well within various aspects. So I think we're well served on that committee. We have Mayor Reardon, as well as myself and Councillor Lowe, who are on Growth Committee. So that committee, I think, is still getting its legs. And now that we have growth, and it looks like we're going to keep getting growth, I think we're really going to be able to double down and build something that will deliver for us. So all that to say, Brian, watch the next Growth Committee. Okay, where are we at? Uptown is the fastest growing in Canada. You did not know that. Maybe I didn't. 11.5% was the core was the rate that we were growing at in our Uptown core. So I didn't know what the other rates were in other downtowns. We call it Uptown here in St. John, obviously, but other places call it their downtown. So pretty cool. What are we going to do about Uptown to bring it back to life again? So Daryl, I think the Uptown, the big thing is I guess we have two big things. One, waterfront 2040. So what do we want that waterfront, that area around the Central Peninsula, what do we want that to do for us? What do we want it to look like? And the Funday Key is going to be that Keystone project. It's going to be that thing that builds the foundation of expectation. And that's exciting because it has public space, it has venue space, it has business space, it has residential space, it has leisure space. It has it all. And that is what we need to build in our neighborhoods, right? And especially that's what we need to build in our core. When you come to the St. John core, you know, if you're staying at one of the hotels, if you're just taking in a Sea Dogs game or some venue at the Harbor Station or whatever you're doing, coming to the Area 506, the fact you walk out your door, you know, in the next 5 years, you're going to be able to walk out your door and beyond the Harborfront Passage, get to Tin Can Beach and see some rugged coastline of the Bay of Fundy. You're going to be able to stop along the way and see a beautiful view of a port, a working port, and the ocean as well. There'll be potentially pop-up music venues. In the winter, there'll be a little skating area. It's just going to be a tremendous project. And the Elias Group that's taking that on, you know, certainly deserves all the high fives we can get it, because it's a massive undertaking. It's a boatload of work, and it's a major risk, right? Especially for the city, which doesn't necessarily have a track record over the past 20 years of hitting home runs on growth and development. And so anytime you see that kind of commitment from a developer, it's a good sign that, hey, they're doing their homework and they expect us to grow. So, hey, we're doing our homework and we think we're going to grow too, but it's great to be validated. But also, it's just like, you know what? Thank you for taking that risk. As somebody who's taken risk myself in the past on something I believe in, it's a roller coaster at best. You think you're making it, you're not making it, and then you don't know if you're going to last, and how do you shut it down, and how do you end it well? Oh, we have them, you know, we made a breakthrough, we hit a goal, now maybe we can survive. It's hard. So I think that Fundy Key project is going to bring incredible new life. I think the 506 Festival has already brought new life. The Moonlight Bazaar already brought new life. Some of our boutique stores that have been opening up around town and survived during COVID, they're already bringing new life. There's lots of people that come from Fredericton and Moncton who are like, wow, we don't have anything like this up there. So I think that's coming. There we go, Eric. I think it's coming back well. Eric is starting up his own new bar, his own out of the old Rogue Coffee Studio that was uptown off of Grandin Alley. So look for Eric's project coming soon. He's getting close. And Eric's one of those people who's been involved with a number of initiatives and involved with a number of projects in the city that bring that life to the uptown, that attract people and create a unique culture here in St. John that we don't have elsewhere. Industry was here first, even before the Loyalists. Well, I guess it depends on the industry you're talking about, because even from an Indigenous perspective, this area was a main portage area from the St. John River Valley, and there was a lot of, they would not winter along the coast here because of how exposed it was, but they would come here for our Mi'kmaq, Indigenous founders of this area, original, inhabitants, the unceded territory in which we're on. They would come here to kind of fill out their stock, right? To engage in heavy fishing, to get those food stores that they need for the winter months. And then they would, portage that community back upriver a little ways where it was a little more sheltered. And so it's pretty amazing to know that, not the same kind of industry. I'm not making that argument, but that St. John was always a place to come and develop that resilience, right? And to build resilience for people. And we're still there, and I think we're still doing it. Okay, where are we at? Do we have source material for fastest growth of uptown core in Canada? Yep, there's been a number of committee meetings that we've had as a city that's measured that. The difference is that CRA doesn't necessarily measure our core area in the same way that we measure it. So we have to take the CRA's data as best we can, and not CRA, Stat Canada, that census data. And our staff have run that number and validated against other areas. So like the St. John Central Peninsula is really our core. But, the Moncton has its downtown, and it's much smaller. It's not much smaller, but it's much more clearly defined on paper, as well as Fredericton, as well as other cities. But the city of St. John, because it's such a huge city, landmass-wise, I think there is a discrepancy between how the CRA measures our uptown or our downtown core and how most residents would know it here. And so that 11.5% certainly was validated against I keep saying CRA, but StatCan numbers. Just for your, would love to see this. I can send that to you. I think we had a wonderful briefing by our staff person, David Dobbelstein, that did a high level assessment of that Stat Canada census data and brought that to bear within our own dynamics and compared us to our locals as for sure, but also other cities across Canada. So the core, whether or not it's the fastest growing in Canada, as Brian says, I certainly can say it's the fastest growing in Atlantic Canada. That much is clear. Halifax is growing, of course, but Halifax is a massive municipality that was amalgamated, right? And so it's growing on aggregate faster than St. John, but our core is a different entity, and that Central Peninsula plan stands on its own feet, and it's doing the work we needed it to do. Look at what Halifax Waterfront did. Oh, there's lots of people who don't like what Halifax Waterfront did. There's lots of people who don't like what Toronto Waterfront did. I mean, I expect that we'll learn those lessons, but we haven't had that kind of guiding plan to specifically zero in on our waterfront, because our waterfront spans a major part of the city, and there's just there's no principles driving that development. All right, so we're coming up in the last 3 minutes. Just want to look at some other questions. Right. So St. John. So there's a point brought up here about Fredericton becoming the second fastest city to grow in 21. There's a pretty good reason that it's growing so fast, and that's because of amalgamation. So St. John under municipal reform was not touched. Right. They didn't change the borders. They didn't shrink our borders. That was something that was looked at, by the way. So the province committed in 2018 to assessing the borders of St. John and looking at what the cost would be, as well as the cost benefit would be, of shrinking our borders back to a reasonable size. As you know, if you're running a municipality and you have certain services to deliver, the further away from your core you have to deliver those services, the more expensive it becomes. So I can say, hey, I pay the same taxes that you do anywhere, and I'm out here in Martinon, except it takes 3 times as much money to pay a plow truck driver, a garbage truck driver, a road repair crew, anything to come out here and do work. So it's not fair. It's not a fair assessment to say we all pay taxes, therefore we all deserve the same level of service. It's impossible. But what we're looking at with, that's one of the reasons that the province said they were going to look at our borders and how we could assess those and to try to figure out if there was any cost savings there. Fredericton, meanwhile, could fit into St. John twice. And under municipal reform, they're getting their borders expanded. So they're adding thousands of people that didn't previously live in Fredericton that now, because the borders have changed, do live in Fredericton. So Fredericton is not expected to become a bigger city than St. John. I know Bob Jones did a piece on this and said it could. If if the city of Fredericton's growth rate stays at what it was, and if the city of St. John's growth rate stays at what it was, and if these amalgamations happen, then Fredericton could be a bigger city in 5 years. Could. The problem is, even under the current census that we just had drop on us in the last month, it states pretty clearly that St. John's growth is not staying the same. It is amping up quite a bit. And Fredericton's improved a little bit. And so and if you look at what the natural advantages the city of St. John has, right? Our port, which is expanding rapidly, our logistics, our rail services, which is expanding rapidly, hundreds and hundreds of job vacancies that are here, the presence of heavy industry, which other places don't have, which is in high demand, you name it. They're just the potential growth of St. John based on its opportunities compared over Fredericton, which relies on government expansion and relies on university expansion to grow, right? So we're not even talking about university expansion here in St. John, which we need because we have in-demand jobs that are going unfilled. When you factor in those other pieces that we still need, and we need the province to support us in and fund us in and resource us so we can do the work we need to do, the growth potential of St. John is much bigger than even Moncton, right? Moncton does not have our natural advantages. By 2025, we're going to have an active wind farm. We're going to be unrolling district energy, and I won't go into all those. We'll have the presence of major renewable energies. We'll have one of the greenest ports in the country. We'll have an intricately connected rail system connecting us to Chicago, New York, Toronto, through CP Rail, which is being developed. We'll have an intermodal logistics park, which can meet that demand for intermodal rail shipping. And we'll still have some of our heavy industry advantages. The city of Moncton could never develop that kind of business portfolio. So I stand by that. Moncton's ahead for now. They have a lot of federal jobs there. They have twice as many federal jobs from the government of Canada in Moncton as we do. They've done a great job at developing their industrial parks. They've done a great job at attracting commercial shipping, logistics. But don't forget, everything that ships through Moncton comes from Halifax. And every boat that comes up the harbor, comes up the Bay of Fundy into the St. John Harbor is shaving thousands of dollars off trucking. Right? It's much more cost effective to take a boat filled with shipping containers to a place like St. John and put it on an interconnected rail system than it is to get it off the boat in Halifax, drive it by truck to Moncton, get it on a CN rail to Montreal, then go from Montreal down to the United States, which is biggest business partner. And you can't take all those ships up through this Gulf of St. Lawrence because they're too heavy. So when those ships come, they can't go fully loaded through the Gulf of St. Lawrence to Montreal, which of course is a massive port, but they can't do it because Gulf of St. Lawrence just won't allow it. So the potential of St. John is huge. And I think we're in a good place right now and we're seeing, we've got a new CEO at St. John Energy. We've got a new CEO at the Port of St. John. We've got five or six new councillors on city council. The game is changing pretty rapidly for our city. And I think we've got a pretty good eye on it. And we have a lot of problems to overcome. There's no question. I'm still trying to rapidly expand how we tackle our climate action portfolio, how we develop housing, and how we build out a comprehensive housing policy for our city and strategy. We've got a lot of people working on that, not just me by any stretch of the imagination. But those are the two main things that I'm eyeballing as problems to solve. So anyway, we're at 1 hour and 4 minutes. Yes, thank you for everybody coming. Thank you for Daryl for commenting and for weighing in. Roger, sorry I didn't get to you. I see your point there about immigration and rent control. Eric, thanks for chiming in. Brian, who else? Ryan. Yeah, it was a great little chat here tonight. I plan on doing more of these. Stay tuned. We're hoping to roll out, especially at the next growth committee. We're going to have a bit of a brief on some of those zoning and housing policy pieces that I was mentioning that I think will drive some important changes, especially to your point, Ryan, previously about empowering that and making that more prevalent in our core as well as the rest of our city. So after our next growth committee, I think I'll have more to say. So I'll hopefully be able to do another one of these broadcasts in March. Keep emailing me, keep talking to me, keep messaging me. I want to continue to do these. And every time I get a question that I have to go find something out, it's helping me learn, right? There's a lot that I know, and there's a lot that I don't know. The stuff that I know is because I cared about something enough to go and figure out what needed to happen in order to improve the situation. And obviously for me, much of that revolved around housing, neighborhood development, community development, climate change, things like that. But now that I'm here, I'm learning about zoning, I'm learning about strategic governance, I'm learning about strategic planning, and it's all, a lot of it has to do with either I've been put in a role that I needed to figure out, or I've been asked a question that I need to learn what the details are on. So let's keep talking. Thanks everybody. Thanks for chiming in, and have yourself a wonderful Tuesday evening in March. And here's hoping that from this day on in March, I'm not going to be walking out with a scarf wrapped around my face because of how cold it is. And that we'll see spring start to break forward. I'm certainly excited because maple sap is starting to run as soon as the temperature gets above 0. So I'm looking forward to that. So you'll probably see a few posts from me on the family out collecting maple sap from our trees in the neighborhood. So something you can do too. There's Halifax Seed sells maple, those spiles that you need in the buckets to hang from the tree. So if you got a maple tree and it's over 15 inches around, tap her and boil off your sap and make your own syrup. It's a great thing. All right, folks, have a good night.